How many people have ever heard of a person named Mephibosheth? Okay, we're going to be talking about Mephibosheth this morning. But really what we're going to be talking about is the power of covenant friendship. The power of covenant friendship. You know, we live in a culture that you can have 1,000 friends and nobody to call when you're in trouble. You know what I'm talking about? Social media has taught us how to be unsocial. People don't know how to look somebody in the eye and talk. They don't know how to smile. They have lost the art. They only know how to do things on a keyboard. Okay? And yet, we're going to find that, you know, the Bible is all about relationships, covenant relationships. You know, now, we live in a country where covenant is not really the big thing. It's contract. Everything here is a contract. But in the Middle East, in African nations, in Middle Eastern nations, it's about covenant. They understand that covenant means everything to them. Okay? When you make covenant with somebody, it's not just for you and them, it's even for the next generation. And that's why, you know, God gave that example. He's the God of what? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? Multi-generational covenants. Okay? And so, David, now Jesus came from the lineage of David. David gets into this situation where he is now the king. Saul is dead. And, you know, one of David's dear friends was one of Saul's sons, Jonathan. And Jonathan had his son, and his son was named Mephibosheth. And we're going to talk about Mephibosheth in, just real briefly, a couple of verses. And I'll just turn to it and read it to you. In the same book, in chapter 4, it says in verse 4, "And Jonathan, Saul's son, had a son who was lame in his feet. He was 5 years old when the news about Saul and Jonathan came from Jezreel. And his nurse took him up and fled. And it happened as she made haste to flee that he fell and he became lame. And his name was Mephibosheth." Now we're back to chapter 9. All right, so he wasn't born lame. What happened was, and what happened in those days, was when a new king took over, he killed all the children from the other king because he didn't want any competition. Good thing we don't run our presidential races that way. Okay, think about that. Okay, because if you were king and somehow you got ousted or you left or whatever the case may be, your children and you were in danger of being killed by the new king's family. That was just common practice. So Mephibosheth, he's lame, and he can't run. And what happened was, the nurse was carrying this boy, and she dropped him. Just accident. They were trying to get out of town fast because they were afraid they were going to kill him. And in her rush, and in her trying to get out of town and flee, the Bible says she dropped him, and he became lame. So probably, now medically we could say, probably she dropped him, probably a vertebrae in his neck, or a vertebrae in his lower back broke, and his feet and his legs no longer worked. All right, so now let's pick up in chapter 9, verse 1. So David said, "Is there anyone who is left of the house of Saul that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake?" Now hear what he's saying. He's saying, is there anyone left from the last king's family that I may show him kindness? And why did he want to show someone from the last king's family kindness? Because Jonathan and him, their hearts were knit together. Jonathan was the son of King Saul. But he would always tell David when King Saul was trying to kill him. He was always telling him where the enemy was. So basically, he had this covenant with Jonathan. And he said, listen, is there anybody, because Jonathan's gone too now. So now he's looking, are any of Jonathan's kids alive? There's one left. And probably he was left because he was lame. and they had mercy on him. They figured, well, this guy can't be king. He can't even run and get away. We'll leave him alone. Okay, so this is the picture that's being painted. Now, you know, the Bible talks about all the time that David was a man after God's own heart. And here we see why. When the normal king would say, is there anyone left that we haven't killed yet? He said, is there anyone left that I could show kindness to? For my friend Jonathan's sake. Because he helped me in my life. He was assigned to me in my life. And I feel like now the covenant has to go into the next generation. All right, so what happens is, verse 2, and there was a servant of the house of Saul, whose name was Ziba. So when they had called him to David, the king said to him, are you Ziba? And he said, yes, at your service. You ever wonder where that term came from? Maybe right here. Then the king said, is there not still someone of the house of Saul to whom I may show the kindness of God? Amen. You know, today we would say he wants to pay it forward. He wants to do for the next generation what someone in his generation did for him. I don't know if you're seeing this, but this is the power of covenant friendship. This is the power of friends, of marriage partners, of family, okay? It doesn't stop at death. It moves to the next generation, and to the next generation, and to the next generation. And in this culture of pressing buttons and finding friends that will wish you happy birthday, but don't know where you live and don't know how to call you. And I'm not making fun of it. I'm on Facebook. I have close to 1,300 friends. Probably I know by sight and talking to maybe 200 of them. And the rest are just Facebook friends, I call them. All right? Or Facebook friends, as we call it. All right? So this is our culture now. And this is a problem. Because our children are not used to dealing with humans. They're used to dealing with keyboards. They fight with a keyboard. They fight with their thumbs. They're being raised in a generation totally different than the generation when we would go out in the cold, in the heat, we'd fall, we'd get hurt. These guys are laying on couches doing this. Okay? Now, I have a grandson that does some of this. So I'm not putting anyone down. I'm saying let's be aware of what's around us and what God really has for us. Because God has real, true covenant friendships. So what happened was Mephibosheth, he gets dropped by somebody that he trusted, right? A nurse. A nurse trying to protect him, trying to save his life, somehow trips, like I did this week, and, you know, drops him, and he comes up lame. And back then they didn't have, you know, great doctors, great hospitals, all the things that we have today. Tough break, you're lame, sorry about that, we'll drag you around. Basically, that's how you got handled back then. Verse 4, so the king said to him, well, where is he? And Ziba said to the king, indeed, he is in the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, in Lodabar. Now, the place Lodabar, the word there means dry, rocky place. A lot of you and me at certain times in my life have been dropped. And we've come up in some ways lame, in some ways damaged. You've gone through a divorce, you've gone through a bankruptcy, you've had a great loss, you've lost your job after 30 years or 25 years, and now you're challenged again to trust somebody or a bunch of somebodies. And in this culture, that's pretty hard to do because you hardly get to know anybody. Because they're all behind a screen. But that's what the church family is for. The church family is where you make your connections. Now, you may not connect with everybody, but there should be 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people that you connect with. You could love everybody, but there's going to be some that you'll hopefully fellowship with.
Yeah.
And have some deeper walk with, and deeper relationship with. And so David is looking for, he's just looking for an opportunity to sow kindness into the life of somebody who showed kindness into his life. And that's what the covenant was about. It wasn't just for that person. Well, okay, you're gone. Well, where's your kid? Well, most of his kids were killed because that's what they did. So he's in this dry, rocky place, which speaks of, actually in the Hebrew it means a pastureless place. There was no pasture, no green grass growing. He was in a bad time in his life. He was hiding, he was lame, he was hoping they wouldn't find him, and now he finds out the king is calling him. The king that killed everybody else in his family is looking for him. So the king David sent and brought him out of the house of Machir, the son of Ammiel, from Lodabar, from that dry, rocky, fruitless place. I want you to hear this, because some of you are in a dry, rocky, fruitless place, and the king is calling you.
Yeah.
You see, this is really a story not just about Mephibosheth. It's a story about the king looking for you or me when we're in our dry, rocky places and we're lame and we don't know what to do and we don't know where to go.
Yeah.
And somebody's just dropped us. Somebody's just, dropped a bomb on us, so to speak. And we've come up shell-shocked. And so when Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, had come to David, he fell on his face and prostrated himself. Now, you know why he did that, right? He's thinking he wants to kill me. Little does he know, he wants to bless him. But he falls on his face, and he cries out to the king, please, please, let me live. I can't hurt you. I can't even walk. Now, here's the thing. There's a couple of things we're going to pick out of here today. The first thing that you're going to pick out of here is what saved Mephibosheth's life was what he thought was his problem. He thought his problem was, I can't walk like everybody else. But because he couldn't walk like everybody else, he was spared. Because he was no longer a threat. And a lot of times, the things in your life that you think are hampering you are saving you. And you don't see it. Because God is always working behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And all you see is what's in front of you, because that's where you're looking. But behind the curtain, God is doing all these things with the props. And He's getting everything ready for the next scene.